just come out of the test venue. I had my test venue in Mumbai, in Kandivali. Uh, Speaking about the venue wasn't that great, to be honest. Could have been much better. They were also charging some 30 rupees to keep our bags safe, which is something that I noticed for the very first time. I've experienced this never in my life. So that was like a bit of a change and a surprise as well. Not a pleasant one for sure. Regarding the test, so I was in the 9 to 11:30, the first day, first show slot, as we call it. So overall impression of the paper is that the paper was easier compared to last year. So if you have seen the CET 2025 papers, I'm pretty sure you would have found this paper, those of you who have attempted the paper in this slot, to be easier compared to what it was last year. So overall, I would say from a time distribution perspective, somebody could have spent about 20 minutes on the AR section, and it was possible to attempt most of the questions on AR. Some of the questions which were a little difficult in nature were the counting ones. So count the number of triangles or squares or rhombus in the image. Those were the time-consuming ones. But otherwise, if you look at the questions, especially from the series or odd one out kind of questions, they were pretty comfortable, right? So you would have been in a position to solve most of those questions fairly comfortably. The next section, which is the quant section. So quant had all direct questions. So if you have done all your basic level of questions, you could have answered most of them. A couple of time-consuming questions in terms of the calculation. Um, there were two DI sets with 5 questions each. One was a simple set on averages, so girls and boys is given, and then you have to calculate there was a pie chart in it, and you had to calculate what was the average, something of the boys and so on and so forth, the count of boys. Very very difficult, easy and manageable. The one which was slightly maybe on the prima facie looked difficult was related to a girl taking her education from somewhere and then bank sponsoring 80% of it. And then she had some annual spends, some monthly spends that she does. So slightly calculation intensive, but again could have been. So overall, I would say out of 50 questions in the QA section, 10 were DI, 40 were QA, and a good, well-prepared candidate could have attempted definitely 35 plus out of 50 questions. Speaking of the verbal ability section, again, all direct questions, so related to grammar as well, finding the error, changing the voice, those kind of questions. There were some questions wherein you had to, I mean, either you know it or you don't, right? So vocab questions, for example, synonyms, antonyms questions. But if you're good at vocab, then you would have really enjoyed this particular section because then you can breeze through it pretty quickly. So I would say attempting 50 questions was definitely possible even in 30 minutes for somebody who is good at vocab and generally reasonably good at English. I think there were three RCs of 5 questions each. There were some RCs wherein even if you don't read the entire RC, it was possible to answer some of the questions. Having said that, even if you had read the whole thing, I think that would have been better because then you know where exactly those particular things were. So you could have identified by reading the question and then going back to the RC. So it was manageable, but RCs were dense. RCs were not easy to read. And I think each RC had about 4 to 5 paragraphs, short paragraphs, not too long, about 4 to 5 sentences each. So overall length of the each of the RC is, I would say, somewhere in the range of 20 to 25 sentences. So manageable to do all of them. And from a strategy perspective, I think it's better to attempt RCs because you are at least sure of most of the answers that you mark. Right? Coming to the last section, which is the logical reasoning section, this is where you also had some QA questions. So there are quite a few students who were surprised to see some QA questions appearing in the logical reasoning sections. Though they were manageable, the position again, the placement of course was incorrect. So ideally they should have asked those questions in the QA section. But I don't think more than 5 questions of QA appeared in LR. So nothing much to worry about. Standalone LR questions were pretty straightforward, but the way it is with CET classic puzzles were intense in nature, some of them very difficult, especially some of the series based questions, some of the standalone logical puzzles wherein you will not be able to find the logic very, very easily. And one particular question type which was very irritating was the blood relation questions, wherein symbols are used. So, for example, K9M refers to K being mother of M, P3Q referring to P is the sister of Q. And then in each of the options also, you have things given in the form of these symbols. So symbols or numbers. So you have to decode multiple options to finally arrive at the answer. So these are time consuming questions. I would suggest that people stay away from these questions on the first glance and then come back to it in round 2 or round 3. But overall, and again, input output was one thing that I would like to talk about because some of the questions were really tricky. Some were very straightforward, wherein you don't even have to see, you just have to look at the input, the output, and then you spot the logic. So overall manageable, I would say. Out of 75 questions, it was possible for a good candidate to attempt about 60 or more questions, and leaving some of these really tricky questions where it's not possible to spot the logic in the limited time that you have. So overall, from a strategy perspective, for those of you who are going to enter slot 2 today, I would say about 20 to 25 minutes max on AR, around 45 minutes on quant, around 35 to 40 minutes on BA. Ideally, you should not need more than that. And the remaining, if you spend about 60-65 minutes on the logical reasoning section, I think that would be a very sound strategy. From a score perspective, in this particular paper, those of you have appeared, I would say a very good candidate would be able to get 20 plus, 20 or more in AR, 40 plus in quant for sure, 40 plus in verbal as well, and somewhere around 60 plus on the LR. So if I were to total it up, I would say 160 plus. This is definitely possible for a topper. So my estimate would be for this particular paper, topper should lie somewhere in the range of 165 to 170, or even go closer to about 175. It is definitely possible for that to happen. Though very few people will be there at about 175, but some of the candidates that I spoke with at the center were able to attempt about 170, 180 questions as well, which means that it is a paper where you can attempt more questions. Then ultimately it will come down to how accurate you are. So the higher accuracy you have, obviously your score will be better, right? So yeah, no change. Overall, my first take is no change in the number of questions. So overall, the conduct was pretty smooth. One thing that I found, which is something that they should improve from a security perspective, is letting people choose their system. So we were told that you have to go to a lab and you can sit anywhere, which is not the best practice, I would say, to conduct these exams, because then there are chances of cheating happening. So I sat at a particular machine. I saw that the screen was flickering, so I moved to another machine. So just make sure that you're getting the right system, in the sense that everything is working fine, your mouse is fine, the scroll is working okay, and all of that. And one small tip that one of the candidates gave me after the test, in fact, something that I should have done in the beginning, is the scroll, the left and right scroll of questions in the AR and the LR section, and in most of the sections where the question is lengthy, because of which it is not fitting in the question panel. So what happens is you have to do a left-right scroll. Now that left-right scroll is just at the bottom of the question, and it was a little irritating. But as one candidate told me, that it was possible to hide the question panel. So the question panel is on the right-hand side, by the way, the way you must have experienced in most of your mocks. So the question panel is on the right-hand side, where there are drop-downs for the sections. You can hide that particular question panel so that the window expands a little bit, and then you don't have to scroll so much. So that is a tip that I would leave all of you with who are going to attempt the remaining slots. I'm going to have a detailed analysis at 1 o'clock. So join me there, where I'll talk about more exactly the number of questions across the sections. So those of you who have taken the test, make sure that you join it. But for those of you who are going to take it today or tomorrow, wish you all the best. Make sure that you play according to your strength. Don't have to change strategy too much, considering the paper is easier compared to the mocks that you have taken. So I wish you all the best. I hope you have found this particular session useful. Thank you for joining, and wish all of you all the best once again. Bye. Take care.